Well, I remember the first day I ever got to play varsity football. It's a big deal. I was a sophomore in high school, and I'm afraid to say I was a backup. But during one particular game, our team was losing so bad, so bad, that the coach just decided he was going to give up and start sending in the underclassmen. And so the coach yelled my name, "Jones, get on the field." I remember it to this day. I looked into his eyes, and I said, "Coach, I am not going to let you down." And with a battle cry, I charged the field with all the enthusiasm that I could muster. And then he said, "Jones, get off the field." In my excitement, I had forgotten my helmet, which apparently you need when you play football. Specific situations require specific attire. Am I right? Football players are supposed to wear helmets, apparently. Soccer players wear shin guards and cleats, and soldiers wear armor. In our scripture this morning, the Apostle Paul tells followers of Jesus to put on the full armor of God. Of course, he's speaking metaphorically. None of us wear armor when we go outside, unless you're a police officer. But why does Paul use this metaphor, and what possibly could it mean? He says, "Put on the full armor of God so that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil." Wiles is another word for evil schemes. But then he says, our struggle is not against enemies of blood and flesh, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness. Now, if you're anything like me, when you hear that, your mind automatically goes to Ghostbusters. But you're probably not like me. Or maybe spooky things like demons or evil spirits. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe in a spiritual realm. And I believe there are dark forces that are constantly acting on us and trying to influence us. But the work of those unseen dark forces, more often than not, it does not look supernatural. Those dark forces will lead to things that look very ordinary. Things we see and experience all the time. Like making bad choices. Doing things that are harmful or destructive to ourselves or to other people. Habitual sin, anger, envy, jealousy, greed, wrath. Or perhaps, very common today, just pulling away from people. Pulling away from community. Or giving in to self-loathing or self-hatred or self-obsession. Sadly, all of these things are very common. And maybe you're experiencing it right now in your own life. Or you know somebody who's experiencing something like that. And then you also have the principalities and powers that Paul talks about. And those can often manifest in much larger forms of evil through things like institutional racism, or corporate greed, or child trafficking, or drug trafficking, or poverty, or war. Evil takes on many shapes. I remember back when I was working with college students at Seattle Pacific University, one of my aspects of my work would be to do wellness checks with students. And I remember getting a call from a professor saying that one of the students who lived in my hall had not been to class in over 2 weeks, which is a bad sign, especially when you're spending $55,000 a year on school. But when I visited that student, I went into his room and can I sit down? Can we talk for a bit? And I asked him, "How you doing?" He said, I'm fine. Everything's okay. I'm okay. You don't worry about me. You don't have to be here right now. I was like, okay, can we just take a minute? I just a couple questions for you. How you sleeping? Coming to find out he's not really sleeping that well. How you eating? What kinds of things have you been eating lately? I've come to find out he's not really eating either. He hasn't been to the cafeteria in weeks. And I ask him, what kinds of stuff you thinking about? I press him a little bit here, and how's your mental health? What's going on with your emotions? And at this point, that's when he starts to cry. And he says, if I'm going to be totally honest with you, I'm actually not doing so well. I'm feeling really alone. And I'm scared because I keep on thinking about how I might hurt myself. And then he said, I feel like I am constantly surrounded by darkness. I told him, thank you so much for sharing that with me. Now let's get you some help. Now, I don't think that kid was evil, but he was being influenced by some pretty dark stuff. Do you have any experience with this? And we read our text this morning. Paul wants us to understand that we cannot go through life naively thinking that evil doesn't exist. Naively thinking that there aren't forces that actually want to see you fall apart. Paul's saying it's there. There's evil in this world. So when you decide to have the courage to step out your door, or to have the courage to even go online from the comfort of your own home, Paul is saying, you got to be aware. There's some dark stuff out there. It wants to hurt you, tear you down. So be ready. Be prepared. Put on, he says, the full armor of God. But how? How do we do that? He gives us the answer in verse 18. Did you hear it? Pray in the Spirit at all times, in every prayer and supplication. To that end, keep alert and always persevere in supplication for all the saints. We put on the armor of God through prayer. So my question for you this morning, do you pray? How's your prayer life going? Now you might think, really, prayer? This is elemental. This is simple stuff. Are we in Sunday school just prayer? It's so simple. But the truth is, sometimes it's the most simple things that are the most important. John Wooden was considered to be the greatest college basketball coach of all time. During his years of coaching the UCLA Bruins, he won 15 Pac-12 championships. He was the NCAA Head Coach of the Year 6 times. And his team won 10 national championships. There was at one point where his team won 7 national titles in a row. Friends, these records will never be broken. He's that good. But on the first day of practice every season, John Wooden would not focus on implementing his complex offense. He wouldn't focus on, complex maneuvers on the court. He wouldn't even have his team shoot the basketball. On the first day of practice, John Wooden would focus on teaching his players how to put on their socks and how to tie their shoes. Greatest basketball coach of all time. Because as a successful basketball coach, John Wooden understood that you can't win basketball games unless your players don't take care of their feet. it doesn't get much more simple than socks and shoes. Prayer may seem like a simple idea, but it is the most fundamental, the most important practice we do as Christians because it's what nurtures our relationship with God. The problem is a lot of Christians misunderstand what prayer is all about. I have conversations with Christians all the time about that. Prayer doesn't work. But when you think of God as your divine vending machine, it's not going to work. That's not what prayer is all about. We have to move beyond just assuming that prayer is just us asking God for whatever stuff we want that day. Prayer is about placing ourselves in the presence of the holy. More often than not, prayer is about us being changed more than how we're going to change God. Sometimes prayer is less about speaking and a lot more about listening. In fact, Martin Luther once said, "The best prayers are the short prayers." I like that. So how's your prayer life? When you do your morning routine, when you get ready for the day, what's that look like for you? You get up, hopefully brush your teeth. Maybe you brush your hair if you're cursed with the burden of hair. It's nice, Todd, right? You don't have to worry about it. I love the bald look. It's great. Maybe you make a cup of coffee. I'm hoping at some point in there you put your clothes on, right? And then what do? You go out and you face the day, whatever that might be for you. Have you been going into the world without your armor on? One of the things about when you think about all these different aspects of the armor, it would take some time to put all that gear on. It takes some intentionality. You have to give yourself, it's going to take me about 20 minutes to get the breastplate on, right? Strap on my helmet. I think there's a reason for that. I think Paul wants us to understand there's an intentionality about prayer. Make room in your life for putting on the armor of God.